I am Lucinda Curran, your host for the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium, a world-first event. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Bruce Lourie. So Bruce, what is the work that you do?
Well, quite a few different things, Lucinda, but one thing that I've focused on over the last few years is writing books that really highlight in a public way and in a personal way the many different chemicals that are in products all around us and how those chemicals can cause harm.
And why was it that you moved into the books from your other work that you were doing?
Well, I've been working on these issues for around 20 years now, and it just felt like I guess a combination of not seeing as much progress as I would have liked through the work I've been doing, which has been more like trying to influence governments and working with NGOs and doing kind of more traditional environmental work, and also just having seen so many things over 20 years that thinking that I had something useful to add to the whole issue of toxic chemicals, and my colleague and co-author Rick Smith and I really had this idea that if we talked about these issues, and these are, for many people, they're kind of either complicated or scary, or the science is difficult, issues that aren't really easy to explain. But if we thought we described them to people in a way that would be simpler to get across and tell personal stories, and also make it a little bit humorous, that we might actually be able to tell the story of toxic chemicals a little more easily.
And also, I believe you're actually doing other writing as well at the moment, and that would be with your PhD. How's that coming along?
Yeah, well, in fact, a lot of the thinking that's gone into the two books has been based on my PhD research, and in particular, just trying to understand. For me, it's kind of a fundamental question, which is, given what we understand about the effects of toxic chemicals, why isn't it that we do more to try to protect ourselves? So, when you spend 20-odd years doing research on this, and you realize how, the more we look into it, the more we understand what kind of harm these chemicals are causing us, and particularly our children, it just makes you wonder, like, why do we continue to use these chemicals? Why do governments not regulate them properly? Why do companies continue to use them? And so that's really at kind of the heart of my PhD research.
That sounds really exciting. Now, you initially studied geology, I believe, and then environmental studies. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And so what led you to studying in these fields?
Well, Canada, very much like Australia, is a country with lots of resources, lots of minerals and mining companies, and oil and gas and coal, things like that. So I guess I was just interested really in initially kind of the whole world of geology and geological sciences, and I guess for me too, it was the science part of it that I found interesting, and through my work, as a student, I ended up working for a large Canadian mining company, and frankly, I was a little horrified by the activities of this company, and just watching the toxic waste get dumped into rivers and forests in the day. We're talking about almost 30 years ago now. There was very little environmental protection, and I thought that this kind of stuff didn't happen here, and so I was a little, I guess I was maybe a little naive, and but it was that experience that actually got me to go into studying the environment. In fact, I ended up doing a master's degree looking at the environmental impacts of mining in northern Canada, and that then just kind of took me into the whole issue of toxic chemicals and resource development, and really kind of led to my career.
That's an incredible story, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's maybe for me less incredible because it's my story, but I'm kind of proud of where the work has taken me.
Absolutely, and I can imagine for someone like you, being in that mining environment and seeing what was happening would have just been devastating.
Yeah, and it was this real combination of, a group of us as students, at the time working for this mining company, and it was the stark contrast between the pristine lakes and forests where we were working, and then the activities of the company, which just seemed to have, such a blatant disregard for that environment. And when I look back now, it's been long enough that I realize that, we were kind of probably among the first students that were just at the forefront of, environmental education and environmental understanding. And so, it was, in fact, we used to joke as geology students that, even if we had located an ore body, we wouldn't tell the company because we all loved the environment up there so much.
I like that. I think that'd be what I'd be doing as well.
Yeah.
So you and your co-author Rick Smith experiment on yourself. So how did that come about?
Well, that came directly from a program that we were running, or Rick really was running at the time. Rick was the head of an organization in Canada called Environmental Defense, and I was the chair of the board. And the program basically was to raise awareness around the fact that toxic chemicals were present in essentially all of us meaning at the time, all Canadians, but also, all Australians, all Americans, all Brits. So we did these simple experiments where we just tested the blood of famous Canadians and politicians in Canada, and then gave them the results, and then asked them to respond to those results. And so, they were absolutely shocked when they saw that they would have, anywhere from 100 to 150, known toxic and carcinogenic chemicals in their body. And so, we'd done that work, and then when it came to writing the book, we figured, well, of course, we'll have to at least measure the chemicals in our body. And, I kind of blame Rick for the idea that, well, rather than just measuring the chemicals in our bodies, why don't we conduct experiments and see if by using different products that we know contain these chemicals, whether or not we could actually watch those chemicals increasing in our bodies, over a period of time.
I think that is so incredible, and I think lots of the participants of the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium will also feel the same. A lot of us are chemically sensitive, so that's just, really quite confronting to think about doing that to yourself. But obviously, you're fine now. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. And in fact, just to your very point, what we always stress when we're speaking about our experiments is that we didn't really do anything differently than what millions of other people are doing every day, around the world. We were using products as directed, whether it was soaps, shampoos, deodorants, eating tuna, toothpaste with triclosan. Like we just basically used these products like anyone else will use them. But the only difference is we were very careful in undertaking tests and sampling our blood and urine, at regular intervals, and then sending them to sophisticated laboratories to measure the chemicals in our bodies. But for people who have chemical sensitivities, you are basically, unwittingly exposing yourselves to these chemicals every day. And, for people with sensitivities, having, potentially very serious reactions to these chemicals. But in many, many cases, you don't even know those chemicals are in the products because they're so poorly labeled, or the chemical compositions are just so complex that you're not really going to have a good idea of what's in these things.
And I know you'll be talking a lot more about that in the symposium. Could you tell me why you are so passionate about the work that you do?
I guess I just get really frustrated when, I'm reading reports, I'm reading science studies, or I'm speaking to scientists in the field that are working on these issues, and it doesn't seem like it's a radical idea that you would tell a company to stop putting a chemical in a product if you know that chemical is linked to, ADHD or Alzheimer's or childhood asthma or cancer. It just doesn't seem like that's an unreasonable request. And so I just think that, someone has to be standing up and saying we need to do things differently.
And I thank you on behalf of everybody for doing the things that you are doing, because it's making a big difference. So everybody, Bruce Lourie will be a speaker at the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium, and you can find out more at environmentalsensitivities-symposium.com.